This video is from my series that walks you through how to build a career in film and television production.
So building a network map. In this next section, I understand and I'm not going to lie to you. This section is in the weeds. It's research from the trades, IMDb, Studio Systems, Variety Database, People, Us, Entertainment Weekly, Zoom Info, from wherever you can get information. We're going to scrub the databases for whatever information we can lift. It begins with IMDb and Wikipedia, but you can also search outside of those two sources as well. You don't have to do all the research at once. It is slow, it is methodical, it's picking through, it's making decisions about what to include and what not to include. But the faster you get this work done, then the better you'll be and the further along you'll be. Don't be surprised if it takes you literally 10 to 20 hours to complete this project. The basic research is going to build a list of executives or key people for the job that you are interested in, your goal, your dream job, your goal job, from the list that you built of the shows that you admire, the top 20. At the end, we're going to distill down a hit list of 30, 20, 40, however many people you're comfortable with connecting to, either through email, cold calling, which I don't love, but it could be through emails, it could be through LinkedIn, it could be through social, it could be just about anywhere. The goal is to build a wide database from your list of admired shows and then distill that down to a list of people that we're going to put on a hit list that we want to connect to. So you started last week by filling in your top 20, your most admired shows in your chosen vertical. We're now going to take that list and we're going to fill this part in. But in this list, you'll see I've only taken the top 2 out of my 20, but yours will be complete. You're going to start filling in this part of it. And in addition, we're going to fill out the exhibitor, distributor, and producer detail where it's available. So using last week's admired list, we're going to build on those 20 shows that you added. And this week, we're going to add in the executives, and then we're also going to fill out the producers, the companies, the executive producers, the writers, the directors. If your goal job is on crew, none of these, with the possible exception of a producer, are actually your hiring manager. But nonetheless, it's good to know who they are, and it's good to track them either way. Basically, the people we're researching here are the production managers and above. Now, I've said in many different parts of this program that the production managers aren't necessarily your hiring manager if you're working for a job as a creative, a writer, a director, an actor, or a producer. Those aren't typically the people who are going to hire you for those jobs. They can and do often hire for crew jobs, but they don't hire for creative jobs. That being said, they're not the hiring manager, but they do know who the hiring managers are, and they have deep contacts and a very wide network in a lot of different places in Hollywood. So in other words, it doesn't hurt to get to know and interview production managers. And when I say production manager, I'm talking about the production manager, the UPM, and the line producer. They can be accessed, and they are a good point for building a referral. They will not be the hiring manager for the creative jobs, but they know everyone above the line, especially on the shows that they're working on. The production manager, UPM, line producer, they all have the rules, regulations, terms, and conditions all in their head. They are also a very deep well of production information. They are the ones who get shit done. So why are we doing this? We're doing this to learn the landscape of the vertical that you want to work in, to identify the people on the shows that you want to put on your hit list. Ultimately, we're looking for an entry-level job either at the bottom of the business or an entry-level job as you're leveling up into a new part of your career. No matter where you're headed or where you are in your career, you're moving up to a new level that is essentially entry-level for that job that you're currently looking for. We're doing it to identify the people that we're going to distill down into our hit list. We're doing it to be relevant so we understand who works on what and who works with who. So if we meet someone out in the wild, we know how they're connected to the vertical that we want to work in and how they're connected to the people that we do want to ultimately get to see if we can meet them, we can interview them, and ultimately maybe even work for them so that they could become our sponsor and pull us up into the next job that we're looking for. So here's the list of my top 20, and now I'll go through an example of how I researched the top 2 shows on my list.
I'm going to use Killing Eve and Fleabag, both of which I thought were really good. So here's a job. So Killing Eve, just simply go into IMDb and type Killing Eve. What you'll get is a list of all the crew, all the episodes. You're looking for the link that shows all crew, which typically is right under cast. They reformat these all the time, so it's constantly changing. Full cast. And then from the cast, we're looking for, Jesus. A lot of people were employed on this project. So here's what you're looking for. The line producer isn't relevant to you. Those people do what I did. They just brought materials and people together to make a project. The people who will hire would be this one. Lee Morris is probably one. And in this case, we are going to probably have multiple people we want to target. Let's do it this way. Sandra Oh, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. These are all people who are cast on the show as well. Probably not relevant. The development producer is one we definitely want to try to pick up and figure out who that is and what they do and where they work. I don't know these names, but they are people who worked on this particular project and are executive producers. Oftentimes, executive producers in television are showrunners, writers. Like you see here, there's a story producer, probably a writer and not necessarily a person who was actually a development executive, although probably good to know. Jenny Robbins, you can see what her credits are. There you go. Looks to me like she's a writer by and large. It's got additional credits, but as a story producer. But you can see up here that she worked on EastEnders and as a writer, and then later on worked in oh, interesting. She also worked on Fleabag. So anyway, the point is we're looking for people who actually made these projects happen. And that would be an interesting person certainly to put on our list. Oh, sorry. Let's do that again. I was looking up Jenny Robbins. Probably an interesting person to put on our list for 2 reasons. Number one, she has experience as a writer, although these are probably all British based on the names. She has, for 2 reasons. One, she has experience as a writer, and she's moved her way up into continuity and then ultimately into a producer title. But getting to know that person who might be a sponsor in the room to advocate for your material is a good person to try to figure out if there's a connection, right? But the first step in this process is to just find the people who are the target title we're after. Obviously, connecting with the director, if there are, any of these, certainly good to know who they are, what their names are. They may have come from a production background. They may have been a development executive. You never know. These jobs can come from anywhere. Maybe picking these up and putting them down as a title target, or a target title as the director. And because this is episodic, there's going to be a lot of them. Getting to know these people and seeing if you can make a connection to them is a worthwhile endeavor. There's no reason not to do that. So I would probably pick up all of these names. I would pick up the executive producers, and I'm just clipping through the producer section and looking for someone who works in development. I would take all of the executive producers And then I would drill down on those people and see what they've done in the past. Sometimes you'll find executive producers who do one thing and then they disappear. Those people are managers, they're agents, they're friends of somebody who haven't really moved up and don't have a consistent career. This is probably one of them. She worked on Killing Eve and hasn't really done anything since. And she did a few titles before that. Probably not someone who is responsible for that project getting made. And those are kind of the decisions I make. And what I'll sometimes do is I might include her, but I'll rank her lower in the list of people I want to target, because she was an executive producer. She worked on 16 episodes, and she may be moving up. You never know. Could be a person worth connecting to. The point of this exercise here is to figure out how these dots and how these people and how these names and shows connect, so we can figure out which vertical we're talking about. At any rate, so I'm going to go through and see how this is structured. I'm going to take a look at some of the other crew. I'm going to see if there's any names on here that I know. Maybe you've met someone in your career, whether it's a cameraman, a grip, an electric. It could be anybody. It could be a producer you've come across in your career. Just clip through and see if it's anybody who you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I see you worked on Killing Eve. Do you have a connection to Gina? Do you have a connection to, where was the executive? Lee Morris, right? Maybe Lee Morris is actually, these are also put in non-alphabetical order. They're put in chronological order because of power, oftentimes. Not always, but many times they do. So you can see this guy is consistently working. He's worked on multiple projects. It looks to me like he's done mostly British television and he's not an American, which is where this show came from. So I'm looking at I'm looking for the people who actually made shit happen. This other person we listed earlier, Jenny Robbins, I think was the name. No, Gina, it was Gina, how do you say that name? Mungichi. She's probably someone coming up and not necessarily the person who made this happen. Lee Morris, in my mind, from what I see, is probably the person who is the executive who either owns it, licensed the material. I don't know what the background is, but nonetheless, that would be someone I would put on my list of a target title. There is no hard and fast rule for who to include here. The point is, we're going to start looking to see if any of these names repeat themselves. And if they do, then that's a person we want to be connecting with. I would want to be connecting with Lee Morris anyway. Probably difficult to connect to, but nonetheless, we want to include them because there may be a reason or there may be an opportunity for us in this particular example. The next thing I would do, I'd just go down to the next title. Fleabag. See the full cast. Much tighter, much smaller. You see how now this group of people, and this isn't uncommon in Europe, the number of producers on a particular project outside of the United States seems to get smaller very quickly. So there just aren't as many jobs. So I would first take a look at Lydia Hampton and see if this is a person pretty consistent, but kind of up and coming, seems to me. Let me get rid of Lee Morris. Who's next? Line producer we don't care about. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the actor, the lead. Those don't typically go anywhere because they're more vanity titles. Here we go. Harry is the writer, it looks like. You can see he's written on a ton of shit, and he would be a person who we would probably want to put on our list of someone who we want to try to connect to. I'm not saying we're going to call Harry directly, because if he's a showrunner, he's probably not accessible. But nonetheless, we have an opportunity, or at least someone to connect to who we know. Let's get rid of that one. Who we know is in a senior role. Same with Jack Williams. I would do the same thing with that one and see what his background is. Yeah. Again, writer, showrunner, So it looks to me like Phoebe Waller-Bridge is getting all the credit for this project because she probably created it. But these people are the actual, the heavy lifting is done by them. Line producer we don't care about. Harry Broadbeer. That's a B, not a D. So there we go. Director. He's the director. He's the one who originally started this. Probably not a bad person to get to know, or at least put on our list. And then Sarah Hammond. Let's have a look. Joe Lewis. Yeah, so she seems to be someone who's coming up and probably an interesting personality to get to know. Jack Williams. Yeah. Sarah Hammond. Let's put her down there. She looks English to me, especially with that name. So she may or may not be accessible in the US. But nonetheless, I'm going to include it. And then finally, Joe Lewis. He's a production manager. Yeah, not of any real value. Although I will say, I sometimes will connect with these people. I'll include them because the production managers are easier to get to and make a relationship with. So he's got an executive producer type title, but the truth is he was a UPM or a production manager. Unit production manager is what the acronym stands for. It's a DGA title. Nonetheless, sometimes I include them because it may turn into something. You never know. It's worth kind of pursuing and putting them out and connecting with them. You can see it's done a bunch of work in the US in addition to Fleabag. So he could be an interesting personality to try to make a connection to. That is the target titles we're going after. So now we're going to hit Wikipedia. The purpose of Wikipedia is to confirm what we pulled from IMDb and pick up the production company, the exhibitor, and the distributor information if we can get it and if it has any value. So Killing Eve, Wikipedia. We're going to use it to confirm the names of the people that we've already picked up, Lee Morris, Henrietta Colvin, and Jenny Robbins. So I'm going to go down to the executive producers, and I see one actually that I do want to pick up that I missed, and it's this one right here. Sally Woodward Gentle. I don't know who she is, but obviously she's somebody. I'm going to put her here, although she's probably going to, I'm going to move her up above. I'm going to put her at the top of the list because that's how Wikipedia has her listed. The truth is, the studios must have people just sitting around all day long doing nothing but filling in these Wikipedia pages. And what we can glean from this page is, one, we missed somebody, Sally Woodward Gentle. And also it tells us the pecking order of who has power within this structure. Obviously, Sally Woodward Gentle and Lee Morris are the two key players. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's the lead on this show. And then some other name. If these aren't actors, I'm going to go back and pick these up. Okay? Same with the producers. I'm going to want to pick up this one. And I'm going to want to add... I'm going to want to go add these two people and go do some research about who they are, because I didn't remember seeing them when we were looking at IMDb, but that doesn't mean it's right. It just means I don't remember seeing them. Okay, so next, I'm going to go pick up the exhibitor, which in this case is going to be BBC America and BBC iPlayer. Let's go pick up the distributor, which in this case is IMG. And the Prodco is Sid Gentle Films and Endeavor Content. I'm going to go research who these players are. Who are these people? What do they do? See if I can learn something about them. So they basically just have Killing Eve and some other material either on the air or in development. Not really getting much from this other than where they are and how they're set up. So it's not a lot here. I'm going to have to go do some more research about them. The next thing I want to look at is I want to take a look at what is Sid Gentle Films and how did it come into fruition? There's 3 references to it. So there it is. Sally Woodward Gentle of Sid Gentle Films. So obviously she's a principal in this. I don't know who the Sid part of it is. It may be one of these other people. It might be, she may be partnered with Lee Morris, who knows? But nonetheless, they brought this property from it looks like a book, just reading through here. So it's from some kind of material that they had brought in to BBC America. It's my guess they have an overhead deal there, or they have an overhead deal with IMG. It's hard to know. I don't really know these players, but just by reading through this, let's do this. Let's add some qualifiers and see if we can get it to, yeah, weed out some of the stuff. Okay, so there's three examples of Sid Gentle happening here. The one we found, and then it talks about, there we go. So this property was brought in by Sid Gentle Films into BBC America, it looks like, and BBC America financed it. And that's how this property came into fruition. So just reading through and searching through the article, I've learned a little bit more about Sally Woodward Gentle, as well as her relationship, or their relationship, with BBC America, and how Killing Eve came into fruition. So by listing the distributor, the Prodco, and the exhibitor here, I'm getting a sense of who these people are and how they're connected to this property, or how they're connected to this show. And then I do the same thing with Fleabag. So I'm going to take a look at who the executive producers are and see if I missed anybody. Jack and Harry Williams. I did okay, but not great. It looks like I need to pick up Lydia Hampson. Joe Lewis I've got in there, which this is an interesting character. We talked about it earlier for the reasons I mentioned. Lydia, Sarah Hammond. I want to pick up Sarah Hammond, which I did. I need to pick up Lydia Hampson and do some research about her, because I don't know who that is. She was a producer in season 1, and she became an executive producer in season 2. So that's interesting, certainly. I wanted, the distributor was BBC Studios. I'm going to go pick that up and list that here. And then Two Brother Pictures. I'm going to go research that one in just a second. I'm going to want to learn what the heck that's all about, because I don't recognize that one. And who exhibited this property? Who was the original network? BBC 3, which I think is the BBC streaming service. I'm not mistaken, but I'd have to read about it. Oh, here we go. See what it says. Yeah, it's a streaming service. So it's internet. It must have exhibited somewhere in the United States, and I do want to pick up that one. There you go, Amazon Studios. That's the American part of it. I'm going to keep BBC 3 because that's probably who brought it in. BBC was probably who originally financed it, cobbled it together with Amazon Studios. And I don't know if it ever found another home here. That's the other piece of this. The Killing Eve, BBC America, that probably was one of the cable networks, is probably where it originally aired. We can go back and look at that and see what network it showed up on, but that would be something I would look at as well. So there you go. BBC America, I'm sorry, Killing Eve and Fleabag. We now know who the studios are. We have some target titles. We made sure we didn't miss anybody just by being complete and looking at Wikipedia. I also want to know, when I'm picking up the production company names, who these players are and what they do. In this case, Two Brother Pictures is something I want to go check out. London-based television company. There we go. Harry and Jack Williams. That's how Fleabag came into fruition, because of these two guys who created it and brought this project in. It looks like they have a deal at BBC 3, and possibly Amazon is where that one came together originally. Well, not possibly, we know that already. So that's who the two financiers were. So Harry and Jack Williams are Two Brothers Pictures. Two Brothers Pictures probably has an overhead deal with BBC 3 and maybe even with Amazon Studios. It's hard to know. With the success of the show, it probably does now, but I don't know if that was the case when it was put into production. But nonetheless, we can see that these people are connected to these entities. Does Sid Gentle have a connection to BBC America? Absolutely. Am I going to go research Endeavor content? Yes, absolutely. We want to go see what that's all about. That's interesting information that we want to know about. So what I've learned from this work and just pulling these shows, that both came from British television, that I probably won't have very good luck in connecting with the above the line team in Los Angeles. They're mostly based in Europe or in London or both. When I'm saying above the line, I'm referring to any one of those writer, director, actor, producers. So the resources for this exercise, the list of American films in 2019, the actual movie title. Here's some more about TV shows and a list of series by streaming service that you can find on Wikipedia. I just gave you some example search strings. IMDb.com and Variety Database are both places you can get this. Variety Database is a paid service. I think you can get a short-term membership. And then Studio Systems, what we use in development. And I'm just telling you it's out there. It's an expensive license to have, but if you know someone who has access to it, great. The other thing you might want to look at is the Creative Handbook, the LA 411, UTA job boards, and then Facebook groups. So anyway, the reason for the Creative Handbook, clip through it and see what other kinds of work and resources are out there as far as all the other stuff that happens. It's sometimes worth looking at and just clipping through and going, oh, that's kind of interest to me. Let me check that out. So anyway, have a look at it. And that's pretty much it. And that's how I research the producers, writers, directors, and executives for our list of admired shows.